Afternoon. Obviously, in a little better mood this week. It was a good win for us. It was a much needed win, and there were some things that I think that I was really pleased with in the game that maybe go beyond just kind of the score and kind of the visual of actually what happened. I think first of all, offensively, I feel pretty good about kind of where we're at right now and how we're playing. This has been really kind of a four-game improvement as we kind of have worked back into some of the things that we've done in the past, and I think Pete has really grown as a player and has got a comfort level right now with our receivers, and so excited about kind of the direction that we're headed along those lines. Defensively, it was a little bit difficult in terms of stopping the run. Now, they changed a few blocking schemes on us, and that's one of the things that as we kind of have experienced this year, I think anytime that you have longer to prepare for a team, it becomes more difficult. And obviously this New Mexico State was the fourth opponent to have the Saturday off prior to playing us. This next week, Georgia Southern is the fifth, which is kind of crazy over a 12-game season that everybody would have that much time ahead of schedule to prepare for you. But they came out with a couple new variations, and the nice thing is that I think at halftime we did a great job adjusting. And so while I'd like to see our defense play better, and especially against the run, I do recognize that there were some extenuating circumstances that we had to make some adjustments, and we were able to do that at halftime and come back out in the second half and basically hold them scoreless, which I think was huge. And then our kicking game was while it hasn't been great, it hasn't been bad. It's just been pretty average. We've covered well, we've done all those things, we've kicked well, but we really haven't done anything impactful. I didn't think through the course of the season where the special teams really made a difference. And I think on Saturday, this past Saturday, they did that, and so consequently, I was very pleased with that. I think Justin Manton kicked the ball extremely well. Obviously, the field goals, but also his kickoffs were all into the end zone. Allowing for touchbacks and field position changes. I think he did a phenomenal job punting and changed the field several times along those lines. And then obviously we had a punt block, which was great to see. Alex Johnson did a wonderful job in terms of getting through, and it really wasn't the primary guy that we thought was going to get the punt block, to block the punt, pardon me. We had a couple other opportunities and just barely missed, and so we were tracking pretty good there. And then obviously off of that, Rashawn Caesar had a big punt return, and it's so difficult nowadays with the shield punt, the way people are doing it, to try to actually get blocks and to get big returns. And this was a different group, obviously, out there in relation to they were not a shield punt team. And so we did have some opportunities, and we took advantage of them, so I was very pleased with that and kind of how we handled those things. And now we've got a very good Georgia Southern team, a team that is obviously – has already won a share of the conference, and so we're anxious to have that opportunity to go play, which is, I guess, basically is going to be the conference champion, and kind of see how we compare. And I think that's kind of how we've painted the picture with our players. I think our players are very excited about this opportunity. Georgia Southern's played extremely well through the course of the season. Offensively, they are dynamic in relation to all the option stuff that they do. And so you have to be very disciplined, and they've got maybe as a good a skill group in terms of speed that we've seen all year, inclusive of the Power 5 schools that we've played, all four of them. And so very impressed with that, and they've got a senior-laden offensive line. Obviously, they are a run-first team, and so we have to stop the run in order to contain them. And then defensively, I think Jack Curtis, who's been a long-time defensive coordinator even in our league at prior places, he does a great job in terms of keeping you off balance and managing his group. So we have some challenges. They, I think, are leading, last I heard anyway, they were leading the conference in attendance. They've got brand-new facilities, which are phenomenal, and so obviously this is a program that is very much supportive of their football team. I think they're averaging 24,000 or something along those lines is what someone told me. I don't quote me on that, I guess, but somewhere in that neighborhood. And So they're supporting their team well in all aspects, and that's kind of what we expected whenever they came into the conference, that they were going to do these things. I have played down there. The last time I was down there, we were in the national semifinals. I was the head coach at Illinois State, and we're in the national semifinals at the FCS level. And so I've played down there before, and their fans are rowdy, and so it should be a fun game to play in. We're looking forward to it. Questions?
Did you win?
Did it? Oh, we did not.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. They had a very good football team. They had the first Adrian Peterson at the time, and Paul Johnson was the head coach. It was a close game. It was going to be a tough game for us to win. We had 7 starters that we lost over the 2 previous weeks, and at any level, when you lose 7 starters, it's going to be difficult to kind of maintain. But we gave them all we had, and it was a close game down there.
It seems like in the past, Sun Belt teams that are in their first year, sometimes they struggle with either the transition or just coming into the conference. Looking at like an Idaho or New Mexico State, even though they were in the conference earlier when it was first created for football. But what is it about Georgia Southern that they can come in very early and making that transition from FCS to FBS and just really kind of dominate it right out of the gate?
Well, I don't know if this is a surprise. I think that now when you're looking at startup programs, I'm talking about South Alabama, I'm talking about Georgia State, UT San Antonio, some of these other ones, Old Dominion. Old Dominion, I guess, they're not necessarily a startup, but those I think are a tougher road. But if you look back at all the FCS schools that moved up to 1A, the first couple of years is generally when they're the most dangerous, because FCS rules from recruiting, both who you're recruiting, some of the academic things are different, along with the fact that you can go out there with, now you have significant more number of scholarships that you can place in classes, because some of that some opportunities for giving out aid are waived by the NCAA as you move up. And generally speaking, so again, I believe I said this at the very start of the year, the FCS programs that move up to 1A, they're always the most dangerous the first 2 or 3 years, because they have some really, really built-in advantages along some lines. And obviously Appalachian State and Georgia Southern both have done extremely well in the conference because of some of those things, transfers, being immediately eligible, to a lot of different things. And so I'm not surprised by this, and want to congratulate Willie Fritz. Has known Willie for a long time. He's done a wonderful job every place he's been. We first ran across each other back in the 80s, and so I've known him for a long time, and not surprised by the success that he's had, because he's a outstanding football coach and great person, and obviously have done a wonderful job there.
You mentioned this game could be a measuring stick for you guys, considering you're the best team in the conference. So how much of a momentum builder is this for next season to set you up for what you want to do next season?
Well, we've got a good portion of our team back. I think we have 9 starters back on defense and a significant number on offense. And as I mentioned earlier, I really like our redshirt freshman class. I guess it's not a redshirt freshman class because there's several upperclassmen that have been redshirted also. After this year, then there's only, I think, 4 young men that are in our program right now that haven't been redshirted. And I think that's hugely important for us, not just playing with potentially a more mature team, but as I've mentioned before, when you're going up against the LSUs and next year the Georgias and the Alabamas and the Oklahomas and the Texas A&Ms, of all those people that are on the schedule down the road, they're graduating third-year juniors basically. They're going off to the NFL, and if we can play with fifth-year seniors and they're playing with third-year juniors, then you have, hopefully that allows you to close the gap to some degree. But obviously, I think that however you finish the season always impacts the mentality that you have, and we've been fortunate. I think, I don't know, it's been maybe the last 4 years, something like that, that we've won our last game of the season. Isn't that correct?
This weekend would be 4 in a row.
This week would be 4 in a row. That's correct. Yeah, because we lost that first year to Lafayette, and so there's always some momentum changes, I think, going in. But we also recognize that after the bowl game loss, that there was we were down a little bit after that, even though we'd won our last game. And so there's certain momentum that kind of comes from that. I think as a whole football team, we might be playing our best football right now, and so this could be a good measuring stick for kind of where we're at and what we're doing.
You mentioned, I think it was last year sometime, this kind of came up when I was looking at this.
Now, you're talking about last year, and I'm 54 years old, and last year is a long, long time for. Okay.
I'm sitting there trying to think about every last game of the regular season under you, so now my head hurts. But at one point last year, you mentioned, I don't recognize my team at one point with
Right.
some of the problems that you had with losing games and things like that. With this year and everything that might have not gone your way, do you ever feel like that you could not recognize a certain entity of the team or even the staff or anything like that? And then there's a follow-up to that. Go ahead.
No, I think that we're going to have some growing pains on offense early on. I think that any time that you're in a major transition, as we were, that you're going to see some of those things. And we played the game relatively conservatively, as I mentioned at the very start of the season, trying to play to our defensive strength, which I think was accurate. We also had an outstanding kicker, punter that could change the field, and some of those things I think paid dividends for us early on when we opened up 3-1. Now, last year, I had some frustrations because the chemistry on the sideline was not what I expected. And I thought we were giving effort and that type of thing, but there was just not this hunger. I've never felt that way this year. I felt like every week we were a hungry team. Now, sometimes we weren't good enough to win based off who we were playing, but in relation to being hungry, and I mentioned last week, I think that in sometimes these struggles, you really kind of find out a little bit more, and it kind of galvanizes you a little bit. And this reminds me so much of the 2011 team right now, because I thought the 2011 team was very, very similar in nature. It was kind of they were galvanized by what had happened, and it led into a really good off season. And again, a 2012 season that was pretty decent, and especially in relation to the history here.
So with that, is it make it more difficult for these close losses because you see a team that you recognize week in and week out, and just small things are happening, and it just seems like even with the win, there's the heartache of losing these 4-year starters, and both of them being in the program, I think, longer than any other play on the roster right now.
That would be correct. They were both in part of that kind of that thrown together class, that first senior class or that first freshman class that we had that entered. And now again, a lot of those guys, graduated last year that probably should have been in this year's class, because we couldn't redshirt any of them. But I think that I've again very, very appreciative of this senior class and what they've done since they've been here, and everybody else should be too. And when you start looking at kind of the stretch and some of the things that have happened during their time frame, and I'm going to miss them. I mean, this is a good group of young men too. These aren't just good players. We're going to miss these individuals, and so you hate that. But and I hate it that their senior year didn't go quite as planned, because you're right. We had some we had some crushing defeats in the sense that we were right there ready to win the game, and we didn't. And so those tear at you, I think, much more so than when you're getting beat by 14 or 21. And our games were so close. And so it's been difficult along those lines, but for them too. But the fact that they fought through this, again, I think really it resonates with me in relation to their heart and their character, and those are things that are really, really important to me too, to see them kind of grow up as men, and I think that they've done that, and so ultimately I'm very, very proud. And I think that we right now have got a very, very close football team going into this last game, and I think that will pay dividends for us down the road. Now, did you have a follow-up with that, or did
I think there's only 2 on the
Okay.
limit.
What do you think just has made Georgia Southern, like she mentioned about the transition into the Sun Belt, but just when you look at them on tape, what makes them stand out just offensively as a football team that just they didn't have a problem transitioning?
Well, I think that obviously when you have 4 senior starters in the offensive line, that's a great place to start. And then they've got a very, very dynamic quarterback, and I think in today's college football, if you've got a great quarterback and you've got a great defense, then you're well on your way, as I've mentioned before. As long as your special teams don't hurt you, you're going to win a lot of games. And their quarterback he's kind of the driving force. He makes everything go for them. And tremendous athlete, can read the option extremely well, is very comfortable, doesn't turn the ball over. And so their skill set, I think, is pretty good in relation to their speed level. And so they're going to kind of get you in these one-on-one positions. And, if you miss a tackle, then they're going to go a long way.
So this option is what they ran last year before the coach left?
No, this is different.
Oh, okay.
They are not a wishbone-oriented spread option team, okay, as they've been in the past. This is true shotgun option rather than underneath the center option. And while they had option personnel, obviously, because of what they'd been doing in the past, this is different. And quite honestly, I think it's much harder to prepare for than a wishbone because you have some of those same traits, but now your quarterback's off the line to where there's multiple gaps that he can hit in relation to where he would be if he was on the line of scrimmage. And that's why you're seeing, a few more of these teams, even the academy teams, which have traditionally been very option-based, a lot of them have started kind of going to some shotgun-based stuff because there's some advantages to it.
Last week you were talking about just gap fits in your defense, doing their own responsibilities and making sure they were in the right position. So how would you evaluate how they're doing now after this last game?
Well, I don't think we were perfect, obviously, last week. Otherwise, we wouldn't give up that much yards rushing, and that's very uncharacteristic. If we had perfect gap fits, then that wouldn't be the case. But now I will say that in saying some of that, New Mexico State, Greg Brandon does a great job, their offense coordinator, and he had a couple weeks to prepare for us, and they threw in a few different little wrinkles, and that creates some problems in terms of your gap fits. That's kind of what you're always looking for on offense, is to try to create an extra gap. And for somebody that maybe is not as used to playing that gap to have to defend it. And so he does a good job. But again, I thought we adjusted well at halftime and got those things fixed. And so I want to give them a little bit of credit here too, in the sense that, were we as disciplined as what we needed to be? Obviously not. Otherwise, we wouldn't give up that many rushing yards. But I want to give them some credit, too, and I want to give our staff some credit in terms of making the adjustments that we needed to make at halftime.
So getting back to what they do, just because it's so, like you said, so hard to prepare for, and, some teams, or the few teams that run it, you watch on TV, and they make it look so easy, but then it's like you just never know who's going to have the ball after the pitch, or of course, going to keep it. But from your time at Army and a lot of the academies that run this, do you see a lot of things that maybe are similar there, and that you can maybe draw back and think about what you did to defend it and try to defend it? I should say, because there's a lot of people who, look at some of the points that they put up this year, even in their out of conference games.
Yeah, this is Tabby. This is quite a little different type of thing than, again, your basic wishbone things. When you're in the wishbone and you're defending the wishbone, it becomes relatively not easy because it still requires significant discipline. But you have an idea based off which direction the quarterback opens up to begin with, and then you also have an idea from a number standpoint about how many guys are going to be to the side. And so consequently, then it just kind of comes down to making sure that you have the appropriate numbers to that side also in order to defend the option. I think what's different about the shotgun option type of thing that Georgia Southern's doing, and you're seeing a few other teams do some of these things, is the fact that I used this term last week, and it's probably more coach speak but there's a lot of eye candy to this, to where because he's in the shotgun, there's a significant amount of misdirection with the option, and so it's not like everybody's not full flow to one side. Okay, there's all these kind of guys going all over the place, and then you still got to handle the dive, quarterback, and pitch. But the dive might be actually on the opposite side of the call rather than on the front side of where the quarterback's opening up. And that's what I think makes this a little bit more unique, is the fact that you have this misdirection part of this offense, and you can't tell who has the football, and it's kind of going both directions rather than all going the same direction as is traditional with wishbone teams. Did I do a good job explaining that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel kind of silly that I thought that it was similar last year, but
No, well, I think anytime that anybody's option based, I think immediately everybody thinks in terms of wishbone, and this is different. This is a little bit unique. There's again a few teams in college football that do this. Texas State, did some of this against us, and created a couple issues, especially in the fourth quarter.
Getting back to Ray and some areas with the injuries that occurred, and Ray kind of put it out there with what happened with him. But what was it like on the sidelines of seeing those two guys? And I'm sure there's a lot of emotion too, knowing that this probably is the end of your career, not just the end of your season. And how did guys rally around? And like you said, that chemistry on the sidelines.
Yeah, I think obviously they're both very good leaders for us, and they've represented our team extremely well, and so there's already this significant bond as you're talking to in relation to our team and those young men. And so it's devastating, I think, for everybody. Anytime that anybody gets hurt and you have a close-knit team, everybody hurts with that guy, but I think especially more for the seniors. It's so difficult. Whenever you're going through this and you're recognizing that you're kind of at that end of that college time frame, you want so badly to play well, and you want to be able to put some closure on your career and say, every game is important, and I'm going to finish this thing out. And I know that both of them would love to play in this ball game this week because this is the finality based off what they thought going into the season. The realities of this game sometimes change that, though, because of injuries. And so consequently, while you thought that you had another one, maybe you don't, and that's hard. And football is a unique sport, too, because when you take the pads off the last time, you're never doing it again. And that's really hard because a lot of these guys that have success at this level, a lot of their identity is wrapped up in how well they play. That's what makes them special. That's what makes them good, is because that if they don't play well, then they're going to do everything in their power, obviously, to make a change. Whether they sleep more, eat more, lift weights more, whatever it takes, that's what they're going to do. And I think that that lack of having that opportunity to put closure on it makes it even more difficult. If you're a college baseball player, you can still play on your church league softball team. If you're a college basketball player, you can always find a pickup game, right? If you're in golf, if you name the sport, and you get to continue to still kind of do that the rest of your life. Not in this one. This one you're hanging them up for good forever. You're never going to play the game that you love so much ever again, and that's hard. And it's really hard when all of a sudden, it gets taken away from you. And I can empathize with that because I had that happen to me, and so I recognize how hard that is for them. It's part of the reason why I've been coaching, right? And so, again, it was a great injury for me because I probably would not be doing what I'm doing right now if it hadn't been for that. Exactly. I get to play catch sometimes with the quarterbacks. They'll let me play catch with them. So, matter of fact, I think the last time that is Pete in here? Yeah. The last time that Pete and I played catch out there, we play a little game. He and I do. And I generally do it with all the quarterbacks. Just kind of an accuracy game. And that's kind of where that's still where I can kind of look back and throw the ball around a little bit. How about Pete getting ready to break the school record?
Pete says you won.
I was going to let him tell you everybody that, but I think he let me, though. He feels sorry for me sometimes, old guy. And
not grandpa in the driveway just yet.
No, but I'm proud of Pete because, as I mentioned, here he is getting ready to break a record at a school that has had some significant quarterbacks and do it in his first season and all that. So, extremely proud of him.
I was going to say, you could always flip that script and say, I feel sorry for Pete because here he is giving his all, and these, like you said, crushing losses. And for a guy in his first year to come in and do what he's done and get ready to break a record and still be in this position.
Yeah, those losses, like you said, they're very, very hard, but they also mold you. And sometimes that's really good. And I think this team has been molded by some of the things that have happened to them. I'm talking about each individual. And that will pay dividends for this team down the road, but it'll also pay dividends for these graduating seniors in their lives too as they kind of move forward. That there are some tough spots at times, and the only way to overcome them is to bear down.
My last question for you is, you talked about the finale of the season, but knowing that your best finish is 5-7, which I know that's not where I thought y'all would be at this point going into the last game, but it's a little bit of the competitor side of we want to knock off that perfect record that Georgia Southern has, and just there's a little bit of flair there as far as nobody else in the conference has beaten this team. There are those little, maybe not the big wins, but there are those little things that you can hold your hat on.
Well, I think that you're right in that we still that mantra of 1-0 each week, that still carries forward, right? Regardless of what's happened in the past, it's all about the here and now, and so the 1-0 part drives you as a competitor, and then obviously, as Ron mentioned earlier, I think that if this is truly the best team in the conference, then there is this measuring stick for you, and about kind of where you're at this point in time. And so all of us like challenges, and this is based off their record. This would be our biggest challenge of the year, and within conference anyway. So, yeah, there's all that I think can create motivation for you.